Today's episode of Brews and the Boys is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/brewsandtheboys. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Prepare your ears for a Waffle Butt Media podcast.
Welcome to the Brews and the Boys podcast. We are your neighborhood bar podcast. We drink cold beverages and we talk about America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Every week we will be giving you an in-depth look into everything the Cowboys are doing and what we can expect from the Cowboys. My name is Michael Sizemore. I've been following and writing about the Cowboys for many years and currently contribute to Blogging the Boys. You may follow me on Twitter at Mr. Sizemore and follow the podcast at Brews and the Boys. With me, as always, is my producer and football illiterate sidekick, Timmy Two-Step.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
And today we got a special guest. We're going to be talking about the NFL draft, and we have a fellow colleague of mine from Blogging the Boys, Danny Phantom, is with us. You can find Danny on Twitter at DannyPhantom24. That's DannyPhantom 24. Dan, how's it going, my man?
It's going well. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing pretty good. So today I just wanted us to go into your top 50 draft board that you posted on Blogging the Boys that went out today. I want to talk about just your top 50 in general, and then we're going to talk about a couple of just your thoughts on the NFL draft and how it pertains to the Cowboys. So let's go ahead and get down to it. Let's go through your top 10. So you got number one. You got Saquon Barkley. Explain yourself. Why is he your number one best player in the draft?
Well, when I started looking at running backs, I think I probably really started watching tape as late as Todd Gurley, and I started finding these athletic running backs that are just, you always hear they'll say, I haven't seen a running back like this since Adrian Peterson. You don't hear too much of that, but players like Gurley and then again like Zeke, a couple years ago, they're just special running backs. And I see the same thing with Barkley. Just, watching the film, he just looks like one of those players that could just totally, take over your offense. And so what I try to do when I put together my board, I try to do it a little early to where I don't get any outside influence from, Mike Mayock and Dane Brugler. Once those guys start chiming in, I start getting easily influenced by those guys. So I started watching tape, and when I evaluated these players, I always do it by removing, I evaluated Barkley without Zeke being on the team, and I had to go through this and just try to give them honest. If I didn't have a number one running back already, how much I would value Barkley, and he's just, to me, he's just the best player. There's a lot of guys at top where it's kind of like splitting hairs, but for me, he's just that guy. If we didn't have Zeke, I would love to have Barkley.
Yeah. And then, we'll go through your top 10 real quick. At number one, you have Saquon Barkley from Penn State, the running back. Then at number two, you have Quentin Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame. Your first quarterback checks in at 3. You have UCLA's Josh Rosen. You have USC's Sam Darnold at number 4. Number 5, you have the defensive end Bradley Chubb from North Carolina State. At number 6, you have Roquan Smith, the linebacker from Georgia. Let's stop there real quick. Roquan Smith is somebody that a lot of Cowboys fans like, but it's got to be too rich for the Cowboys. They're not going to be able to get someone like Roquan Smith. He's got to be off the board before they pick, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I do. You see some mocks where he'll slide and maybe not down to 19, but he'll get close, and then you'll hear people want to make a play for him. But I don't think he has a chance to make it. But I guess you never know. He's certainly a guy that it would be such a gift if he made it there. Cowboys could use the best linebacker in the draft for sure. But yeah, I don't. He's not something I'm holding my breath for sure.
Yep. And then at number 7, you have cornerback Minka Fitzpatrick. So let's have you on record now. You think he's a cornerback, not a safety.
Oh, I am really not giving much thought about what he is. It's kind of like it was Brugler that said it doesn't matter. He's just kind of like the whole Jalen Ramsey thing. The guy can play. He looks really good on film. I'm not really going to spend much time about he doesn't fit this just right. So I just think he's a really athletic player, and I'm sure teams will find a place for him. But I have him at corner, but I'm not. Yeah. I haven't given it too much thought, really.
Okay, and then number 8, you have the safety Derwin James out of Florida State. You have him listed as a strong safety here. Number 9, you have the defensive tackle Vita Vea, who's another Cowboys favorite. And number 10, you have the outside linebacker Tremaine Edmonds from Virginia Tech. Now, in those top 10, do you realistically see any of those guys possibly being available at 19 when the Cowboys are on the clock? Or do you think all of those guys will be selected before the Cowboys pick?
I think they will be selected. A lot of people who are big on Vita Vea are hoping that he slides, and then if he does, then you even have to wonder, is it something the Cowboys are going to be interested in? But I would think maybe he has the best chance to slide. I would love to have Derwin James. He's one of those players that if somebody is going to be concerned about how raw he is still, or his knee injury a year ago that maybe he drops, that would be such a gift if he fell to Dallas. I don't think those guys make it. I am having hopes that Vita Vea makes it, but I don't think any of the top 10 guys make it.
All right. So then starting at 11, you have the defensive tackle Alabama, Deron Payne, who people do think might be available when the Cowboys pick. When you look at Deron Payne, do you see him as the one-tech defensive tackle that the Cowboys need, or do you believe that there are better one-tech defensive tackles later in the draft that the Cowboys should look somewhere else if Deron Payne is staring them in the face?
Well, I don't think that there are better ones available later. However, there are some that I'm intrigued by, and certainly second round they could be available. But I do like Payne quite a bit, and I think that he could be a guy that immediately comes in, and he's not as raw as Vea is, and he's already just a dominant run stopper. I think he would just fit in great with the Cowboys' defensive line, and I certainly think it's very possible that a player like Payne could be available at 19.
Okay. And then you have, at number 12, you have the cornerback Joshua Jackson out of Iowa. Number 13, you got the wide receiver Calvin Ridley out of Alabama. Calvin Ridley fits that Z receiver that the Cowboys might be looking for, as I've kind of hinted, and we will discuss later about Calvin Ridley. So we'll save that for later. But then number 14, you have cornerback Denzel Ward from Ohio State, and that rounds out your first-round picks, correct? So you only have 14 guys that you would give a first-round grade to.
Yeah, you can make a case for Maurice Hurst. He was on the original top 14 before, but this board is also working with the community at Blogging the Boys, so they're kind of having some feedback, and so he's bumped out right now. Going back to how I was explaining how I analyze this, if you remove whichever 3-tech you want to remove, or whether it's Collins, Irving, or even Tyrone Crawford, if you remove those guys, Hurst would just be a great 3-tech defensive tackle. So I'm still high on him, but he doesn't really. The Cowboys don't need that very much, so I'm okay with pushing him out of the first-round grade right now.
Okay. So then you just alluded to it at number 15. You have the defensive tackle Maurice Hurst from Michigan. Then your next defensive end, your second defensive end on the board is Marcus Davenport, the defensive end freak of nature from UTSA. He's kind of one of those guys that folks are a little hesitant about getting him in the first round just because they don't know if he can do that against better competition. But he did play well at the Senior Bowl. The next guy you have, though, a defensive end, Arden Key from LSU. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. I don't like this player at all. I just think Arden Key's got too many problems off the field, and he has more problems. He's more problems and headaches than he is a good enough player to play. And I think that he didn't really do as well this year as he did in years past at LSU. So I think that the Cowboys would probably stay away from a guy like Arden Key. Wouldn't you think?
I don't know. I mean, I just, I'm trying to look at when you get to this point here, when you're looking at your second round graded guys, and I kind of start thinking about when you're picking late, like we did last year. You want a guy who's is not ready yet, but has that raw ability. I mean, like Taco, for example. I mean, I think most of us knew that there was a lot of work left with Taco to get him where he needs to be, and I think Arden Key is a guy that just has that raw ability and could turn into somebody special on the edge. But I definitely understand what you're saying, and I've seen him kind of all over the place and where he's been stacked out. Some people I've seen him pretty high, but others not so much. So that's just where he's sitting with me right now.
Okay. And at 18, you got one of my favorite players. You got the guard Isaiah Wynn from Georgia. Now, if he's there, if the Cowboys are kind of, wiped out a little bit of some of the players, maybe like Avita Vea's gone there, Deron Payne's might not be there, Calvin Ridley. Isaiah Wynn at left guard would make a lot of sense in the first round for the Cowboys to keep churning those first round picks out on the offensive line. But I do know that some guys like Dane Brugler and others have been a little bit critical about taking a guard there. So I don't know about your thoughts there. Would you be happy with taking a guard in the first round, or do you think the Cowboys need to look at possibly getting a guard later on?
Well, I think it really comes down to your board at that point. I see a lot of people bringing up Wynn's name as a possible first round pick. I don't hate the idea. I mean, it's kind of like it fits in there with the whole Zach Martin thing. It's not the guy we wanted, but let's look at this. He's the best guy we got on our board, so we should take this guy? Or is it a situation to where they look at what's available in the second round and it's like, well, yeah, maybe Wynn's good here, but if we go with someone else now, we can get someone like James Daniel in the second round, because there's a lot of good options available. I mean, if you look at my board, I think I counted 7 offensive linemen that graded out in the second round. So you're going to get one of those guys at 50. Yeah. So that's my reason to be a little bit reluctant about someone like Wynn in the first round.
Okay. So at 19, you got Carlton Davis, the cornerback from Auburn. At 20, you got the offensive tackle from Notre Dame, Mike McGlinchey. At 21, you got linebacker Rashawn Evans from Alabama. At number 22, you got a guy that I'm kind of interested in, and that's Taven Bryan from Florida, the defensive tackle, who's kind of he's got a little bit of comparison. His pro comparison from Dane Brugler, an NFL draft scout, was Fletcher Cox. So I know you don't really need a 3-tech there, but he's kind of one of those guys that is a catalytic player, wouldn't you think? Like a guy that could really help this defense crush pockets and destroy quarterbacks.
Yeah, I do. I mean, he's got great athleticism, and I like him a lot. But he's in a spot right now to where it's like, well, I wouldn't like him at 19, and he's not going to make it to 50. If the Cowboys somehow worked himself into a trade back situation, he would definitely be a guy that I would be targeting.
Yeah. At number 23, you have the offensive tackle Orlando Brown from OU. And then our first hometown guy here from Austin checks in. Connor Williams, the offensive tackle from Texas, checks in at number 24. You have Harold Landry, the defensive end from Boston College. He's an interesting case for me at 25. We'll get into that a little bit later. Number 26, you have defensive tackle Harrison Phillips. from Stanford. Number 27, you have the center James Daniels, who you spoke about, that might be in the second round when the Cowboys are on the clock. They could get him, and he could probably play guard for them. At 28, you have Texas A&M's wide receiver Christian Kirk, who is also a very intriguing option for the Cowboys if they're looking for a second receiver there. You have quarterback Josh Allen from Wyoming checking in at 29. Number 30, Ronnie Harrison, the Alabama safety. You have guard Will Hernandez from UTEP checking in at 31, who's one of my favorite guards. I don't know if he'll last to 50, but he definitely would be a trade back option there. You have linebacker at 32, Leighton Vander Esch. Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver, at 33. 34, you got Isaiah Oliver, the cornerback from Colorado. 35, you got Jair Alexander, Louisville cornerback. There's been talk about if the Cowboys traded back in the first round, like a Jair Alexander might be there. Would you go cornerback in the first round? Do you think the Cowboys still have a need for cornerback there?
I would be reluctant about cornerback, especially if you're trading back to move into the guy you want. There are some good cornerbacks, and I mean, I would take one of the first round graded if they made it to 19 and they were the last of my choices. So I mean, I'm not anti cornerback, but I don't know necessarily that I would try to move myself towards one. I do like Jair Alexander, and I mean there are a few in there, and I like to see how the combine turns out. But I mean, there's like 3 of them I have grouped together that I'm kind of just feel similar about, and like to see evaluate that a little later. But I'm definitely not trying to push myself towards a cornerback.
And then number 36, we'll just go down to 50 here. At number 36, you have the cornerback from LSU, Dante Jackson, who's probably going to have the best combine. He's going to be one of the fastest corners out there. You have Billy Price, the center guard from Ohio State, checks in at 37. 38, you have, I'm not even going to try to butcher this guy's name, but you have the guy from OU, Ogba Okoronkwo, the defensive end, the edge rusher, which will just be great for Tim, who had to spend a whole year learning how to say Chidobe Awuzie. At 39, you have the defensive end, Sam Hubbard from Ohio State. At number 40, you have the tight end, Hayden Hurst from South Carolina. 41, cornerback Mike Hughes from Central Florida. 42, the running back Darius Geis from LSU. 43, the Oklahoma tight end Mark Andrews. 44, the wide receiver DJ Moore from Maryland, my favorite wide receiver in this draft. 45, you have the wide receiver Anthony Miller from Memphis. 46, you have the tight end Dallas Goedert from South Dakota State. 47, from Mississippi State, the offensive tackle Martinez Rankin. For 48, the Virginia Tech defensive tackle Tim Settle, who I'm also very high on. 49, you have the wide receiver from Notre Dame, EQ St. Brown. Number 50, you have the wide receiver Dante Pettis from Washington. So that's Danny Phantom's big top 50 draft board there that you can find on Blogging the Boys. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we got some specific draft questions for Danny Phantom, our Brews and the Boys draft guru here today. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Today's episode of Brews and the Boys is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/brewsandtheboys. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
All right, we are back with Danny Phantom of Blogging the Boys. We just went through his top 50, his draft board there that you can find at bloggingtheboys.com. And so we are going to go into a couple of questions that we had for you, Danny, just about the draft and what you think, how this draft is going to shake out for the Cowboys here. So first and foremost, in your opinion, what are your top 3 needs that you have for the Cowboys, and in what order would you put them in as far as what the Cowboys need to do this draft?
Well, I think the biggest needs for the Cowboys are your left guard position, your one-tech defensive tackle, and then for the third one, it's kind of a tie between strong safety and linebacker, and I think that could change depending on what happens with Anthony Hitchens. But if you look at value over replacement, I believe you'd have to say that the biggest need right now is that left guard. I mean, this is how bad Chaz Green is, and we don't have anyone besides Green. And I mean, if someone were to abduct Zach Martin, Cowboy fans would be like Liam Neeson in the movie Taken. They'd be like, "If you don't bring him back, I will search for you.
Yeah.
I will find you, and I will kill you." But if Chaz Green was taken, people would be like, yeah, I'm not really supposed to be talking to strangers. I mean, nobody cares.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cowboys left guard situation is in poor shape. So I would say for sure that's the biggest need based on what you have available for the next available player. But that necessarily doesn't push me towards I got to find my left guard at 19.
Yeah.
But that's certainly to me, I think, the biggest thing. I mean, and then a one tech would. We have some guys, but they're just guys. I mean, you have, I don't know, Richard Ash. You got Brian Price. You have Malik Collins out of position. Maybe Dayton Jones. I think he played a little there too. But it would be nice to have a good big one tech. And then of course at strong safety, it's like we got Jeff Heath and then maybe Xavier Woods and rotating in with Kevon Frazier. So it would be great if we were able to get a starter there as well. And then of course linebacker is the big mystery because we don't know what's going on with Hitchens. There's always the uncertainty with Sean Lee's health. And then of course, what is 2018 Jalen Smith going to look like? So those are the positions to me that stand out.
So in order, you say left guard, one tech defensive tackle, and a linebacker opposite of Sean Lee and Jalen Smith there. You probably need a linebacker in case you lose Anthony Hitchens in free agency. Now, are you one of those guys that wants to go out and re-sign Anthony Hitchens, or are you one of those guys that says, I'll re-sign him if the deal is favorable, but you think that you could get adequate replacement for what you had in Anthony Hitchens if you do look to the draft?
That's a very good question. And since you've asked me what I think, I'm going to go ahead and just I'm one of those guys that thinks we should overpay Anthony Hitchens. I really want Anthony Hitchens. I know we have to be smart about our money, but I don't really think if we start trying to fill these voids with really terrible free agent replacements, we're doing nothing for our team. So, I mean, Hitchens is a guy he's a known talent. He's very smart. He can do all sorts of different things. I know he's going to demand a lot of money. I really hope that the price is right, but it's like, you hear things about Indianapolis and their new coach over there that knows all about him. They could offer him a lot of money. So, I mean, I'm not going to go to town with trying to pay him a ridiculous amount of money, but I definitely think the Cowboys should try to make a big push to retain him.
Okay, so now if Anthony Hitchens, if they bring Anthony Hitchens back, are you on board saying that you would pay Anthony Hitchens $8 million a year to be a backup linebacker?
Well, $8 million might be a little too much for me. I think I might have had him. I can't remember what I priced him out at. I know it was on the low side, and I'd be willing to go. I would say maybe in the $7 million mark. I think that's maybe what Sean Lee's making right now. I can't remember, it might be a little more than people think Hitchens is worth, but I think you're going to have to protect your investments, and he's a guy we drafted, and he turned out.
Yeah.
And right now, he happens to be in a position to we're not really sure. If Jalen Smith played better last year, more consistent, and you could really see, okay, he's going to be fine, it would be completely different. But, this team really suffered last year when Lee went out. It really suffered. So I don't want to be messing around with that kind of thing.
No, I get you there. I would pay Anthony Hitchens upwards of $6 million, probably in the 6 range. But I think once you start getting to 8, that might be a little too rich for the Cowboys to go with. Now, I do want to ask you, so with left guard, before we move on to the next question, with left guard, Are you one of those guys that wants to draft a left guard high and just keep churning out the first round picks on the offensive line, or are you one of those guys that is saying, hey, maybe you could spend just a little extra money in free agency and find a guy that would be more serviceable than Chaz Green and stuff that you had last year, and use your draft picks for other things, and maybe draft a left guard later, but not necessarily in the first 3 rounds?
Yeah, I think that there's a good young college player that we can draft on day 2 that would be good for our offensive line, but it may not happen. What I do think needs to happen is we have to go into free agency and we have to at least find a viable backup, whether that means bringing back Cooper if his knee's okay, or if it means signing someone else that's we could live with as a starter. I really liked that approach last year. However, I didn't realize just how bad Byron Bell was, and I thought we were sitting okay with our guard between Green and Cooper and Bell. I thought somebody would work. I didn't realize how bad Bell and Green would turn out, and it would end up hurting this team. But I would like the Cowboys to go out there and find someone, spend a little money, and find a left guard. And he's like if we don't get anyone in the draft, we're not sitting in terrible shape. And then if you turn around and somebody like James Daniel is available in round 2 or then you go get him and he becomes your guard. They compete for it. He's your guard of the future. So I would like the Cowboys to kind of go a little in both directions with that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I will say that I think that they could find a decent enough guard in free agency that could start games for them. Back to the Chaz Green and Byron Bell thing, though, because I feel like we've beaten that to death. But Chaz Green was never a guard. He should have never been allowed to play guard. He should have played tackle and stayed at tackle the entire time. And I think they were getting a little too cute there. We talked about it on our past episodes. They were getting too cute there trying to make him be a guard because he was a 3rd-round pick for this organization. They didn't look at Jonathan Cooper as a 1st-round pick because he was a 1st-round pick for another organization. They wanted Chaz Green to win the job, but it did not fit Chaz Green's skill set. And Byron Bell was a tackle as well, and I think that they just because Chaz Green was good the year before as a backup tackle to Tyron Smith, and then when you changed everything up, you ended up worsening your offensive line situation, and we saw in Atlanta just how bad that really got. But moving on to, I want to talk about wide receiver because I think wide receiver is a big, an underrated need that the Cowboys really need to look at. And I'm not saying they need to replace Dez Bryant per se. That's not what I'm talking about, but there have been a lot of people that are talking about Dez Bryant. What I think the Cowboys really need is they need a good Z receiver to put next to Dez Bryant, somebody with a little speed, somebody that can line up on the other side of Dez Bryant and be reliable to catch the ball with his hands and make plays when his number is called. So do you feel that there are some good Z receivers in this draft? And if you do feel good about some of them, who are some guys that you think would be a perfect complement to Dez Bryant on this offense that would make Dak Prescott's life a lot easier?
Yeah, I do think there are several receivers that are interesting to look at. My view is that I believe that Dez is better than the average fan thinks of him. So I'm certainly not looking to replace him, but I'm also not looking to replace him. I mean, there are several receivers I like in this draft. If the right player falls to me, I'll pounce. But unfortunately, the likeliness of that happening won't be until the 3rd or 4th round. I mean, I'll take Calvin Ridley at 19, but nobody else. I'll take Christian Kirk at 50, but nobody else. I mean, I'm a little scared about early picks it seems like it's been a recipe for failure lately. It's as if it's been hard to gauge the college to NFL transition.
Danny, are you hating on my boy DJ Moore? You wouldn't take DJ Moore at 50?
I know. I wouldn't. I mean, you can see by my board that there would be a lot of players that have to be gone before I would get. And it's not really that I don't like DJ Moore, but I see a lot of similarities in these other guys, and I just think that we'll be able to find somebody in in the third round. With I don't like the idea of taking a receiver in round two. I mean, unless someone like Kirk, falls in your lap, which I don't expect to happen. I just think there are too many good players that would help this team better at 50 to where you could get a player of DJ Moore's caliber in the third round. Everybody's got their favorite, and I think that I don't know who the Cowboys' favorite will be, but I think they'll have a list, and I think one of them will be there when pick 81 comes around.
So you're basically you say that you want to go receiver in the third round or further, but you don't want to do your your top 2 picks on the receiver. Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
I think, like I said, it would take those right guys to fall to you at that spot for me to pull the trigger there. Otherwise, I would be targeting receiver in round 3 or 4.
All right. So we're gonna move on there to this is a 2-part question here. What prospect that has been linked to the Cowboys that you've seen linked to the Cowboys do you think is getting way too much hype right now? Like, which prospect are you just saying, hey, slow it down on that guy?
I think it would have to be Will Hernandez, the guard from UTEP. I know you mentioned you like him, and I do too. I like him. He's certainly on my radar, but I think the love for him is overwhelming right now. I mean, the moment he was seen watching the movie Death Wish with Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins, I started hearing his name mentioned as a potential first-round target. It's like, are you serious? I mean, that's a draft death wish right there. I like him, don't get me wrong. He moves well, and he has that nastiness in him, but there are some other players with similar talent that will be there at 50.
And then that brings us to the second part of this question. So who is your favorite prospect that you've been that you may have heard about, or maybe you just like that nobody's giving attention to, that you think people should think more about for the Cowboys at 19?
I think it has to be Joshua Jackson, the cornerback from Iowa. Every year, like I mentioned, I start watching film before some of the favorite draft experts weigh in. I find guys that I really like, but once Mayock or Brewer takes an interest, I get locked in on him. And Jackson is a guy, however, that isn't really jumping off anyone's boards. He's fine. He's ranked in the early 20s, but he's a player I think could be a shutdown corner in this league. I think he's got the size and the wingspan, and he's got the speed. He's an excellent ball hawk. With the investments the team has made last year in the draft at the cornerback positions, I'm not thrilled about the idea of taking a cornerback in the first round, but he would be a good add to this group, and it would be nice to have a guy with some size to contest passes in the red zone, so we don't have to see Jordan Lewis fending off Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do think that that Jackson kind of fits the mold of what Chris Richard likes. He likes long corners. I think that's a long corner there. He also likes guys that are aggressive towards getting the ball, and that's exactly what Jackson does. So I agree. I think that Jackson is definitely being is not being talked about enough in the first round. I also agree with you on the Will Hernandez. I do like Will Hernandez, but I do think he is a second-round player, and I do think that people just see him standing next to the offensive line like Tyron Smith and stuff, and they think, oh, man, this would be great to have another high pick there. But you want to get the value for that pick, and I think that the best way to get Will Hernandez, if you really want Will Hernandez in the first round, I think the only way you're going to make most people happy is if you trade back and get an extra pick there. With Josh Jackson, I'm totally on board with that. I think that it's not the Cowboys shouldn't pigeonhole themselves to thinking that they have to take a certain position type. But I do believe that Josh Jackson, if you wanted to give Chris Richard something to work with there, and maybe Chris Richard, maybe all this talk about moving Byron Jones down to corner is not going to happen. Maybe Josh Jackson is the guy that you want to go get there to play opposite of Chidobe Awuzie. And then before we let you out of here, Danny, because we're going to bring you back for more draft takes, throughout the draft season, we got to know if everything in a perfect world, realistically perfect world, who is your guy at 19? If the Cowboys are staring right at that guy, who is your guy? Who do you think would you be happy to turn that card in and walk to the buffet line?
For me, it's Vita Vea. I think it would be a wonderful gift for the Cowboys if he's still available at 19. It's a perfect amalgamation of talent and need for the boys. He's powerful. He's athletic. He could be such a big help for the Cowboys' interior defensive line. And the best part is he's not a finished product. If there's a knock on Vea, it's that his footwork and his hand positioning still need a lot of work. But that only makes it more appealing as he's got, potential to be something great. So he's the guy right now that I'm pounding the table for. I'm hoping that he makes it to 19. And I think he would just, not only would he be good himself, but what he would allow Malik Collins to do, and then DeMarcus Lawrence, and just our defensive line to collectively, I just think it would be, just much stronger.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Danny, there. I think that if you get Vita Vea there, you're not just getting a one tech, you're helping out the entire defense. I think that everybody's you have a good rotation there at 3 with Malik Collins and David Irving. You got even Tyron Crawford. If they ever needed him to kick inside, he could. I think that Vita Vea is everyone's draft favorite. He's the draft darling. Now, I think you are going to have to lock Rod Marinelli out of the room because he doesn't seem to like fat guys, and I do. But I do believe that Vita Vea would be a perfect pick for the Cowboys at 19. If he falls there, I think that you just got to turn in that card and say, hey, Rod, I know you don't typically like one techniques, but this guy is going to do so much for you, and he's going to open up your playbook, and you're just going to be able to go after the quarterback. I agree with most of your takes here. We want to thank Danny Phantom from Blogging the Boys showing up today to give us his BTB top 50 draft board, and we want to thank him for giving us his draft analysis today. We will have Danny Phantom back with us multiple times throughout the offseason to talk draft. Danny Phantom, you can find him on Twitter at DannyPhantom24. Danny Phantom, thank you for joining us today. Thanks for giving us Danny's draft board and Danny Phantom's draft takes on the Brews and the Boys podcast. Thanks, Danny.
Oh, no problem. Thanks, Michael, for having me.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Well, all right, Michael, thank you for that. And just like I am the football illiterate sidekick of this program, Michael is the technology illiterate sidekick of the program and ended his own recording while recording the outro to this episode. So, I am here now, me, Timmy Two-Step, executive producer of Brews and the Boys and football illiterate sidekick extraordinaire, wanting to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to Brews and the Boys every Tuesday and Thursday. Please remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Brews and the Boys. Follow Michael Sizemore at Mr. Sizemore, me at Timmy Two-Step. Look up how to spell that in the description, and have a great night, Cowboys Nation. Go Cowboys!
Now this is podcasting.